So then we are back with more understandings from the renewed covenant from the Aramaic English translation of the word. We find then these documents translated from the very original manuscripts from the time of the prophets of old, from the time of the prophets of Israel, the prophets of Yahweh, giving us these end of times directives, so then we can line up ourselves for the end and understand His holy plan, the time of then rebuilding. We understand then a great deal of then this time of the end. Understanding from the viewpoint where we stand in our nation, it's very imperative for us understanding our part in this plan, and regarding then the rebuilding is very obvious. Our nation should be also rebuilding, so then we together are in line with the divine plan. Regarding then the political scenario of our country, it is very important understanding the fact of not making radical changes because of the fragility and the system being at the moment very fragile regarding our economy. Great changes at the moment won't help the situation. In fact, it would be the contrary. So it's very wise for our people and we evaluate the dimensions or then the levels of changes. It is very interesting thinking and then at this moment not having big changes other than maintaining the existing plan. Because we've started 40 years ago a plan, and at the moment we are starting, at least starting and stabilizing it, and making great changes won't help the system. Because any trying of then returning to the old ways won't help the situation, neither our country, because we understand the time of rebuilding also is requiring our part in it. So it's very important understanding this factor, because then we save ourselves from a lot of trouble in the future, where then when the future comes we can't reverse it. So the wisest situation at the moment, and then remaining as it is, maintaining this government as it is, and then making gradual plans for the future. There is on the agenda of the country the extraction of our own natural resources. And then obviously we would cut back from those importations of oil from abroad. So then we can control our expenses and then producing more jobs of our own, until we are then rebuilding and maintaining our monetary system. Because at this time we are absolutely cornered. We can't go any further. Any trying of going beyond what we have at the moment is going to work against us. It's an absolutely certainty, and we must be wise on how to behave ourselves in terms of the political factor in our nation. Because it has the point of having a nation already set for the trade of the end. And there is a line of understanding from the scripture giving you every indication in every area. So then we must line up ourselves and then humble ourselves and then do our homework. This then gives us the liberty of then enjoying this next step in a divine plan of bringing peace through trade, secularly speaking. Gives us then time, gives us then more understanding on how we should then have our country ran. There is no point in having military movements around the world. There is no point in enticing wars, because the gap of peace promised regarding then the restoration has come. We must face it, and then we adjust ourselves for our benefit. Because the truth of it, any nation coming against the plans of China are going to be frustrated. Any plan or plans or any group of plans or set of plans are not going to prevail. Because they were set for this specific purpose. So then we adjust ourselves because they have the policy of peace. They provide what is required for the rebuilding. And we must then come to our senses and understand our part in retrieving. It's very important. Iran has no choice. Either they turn around the plant of the nuclear plant into then the electricity generation as they promised, or then they starve. There is no solution. The country is already 100% inflation and the people are then perishing. They can't last for much longer. The Eurozone can't last for much longer. Maybe a few days, maybe 10 days. There are some very important answers that must be answered the next few days. And we know the answer already. Obviously, Iran must give up their plans of building a bomb and then turn the plant around for the electricity. So then the electricity lines can be extended and then the nation can start then the rebuilding. The euro is very obvious. It must be broken. It was a bad deal. And then they must return to their previous monetary system, and then each of those countries weak in economy must join up and make a program with China and verify what they can do for them. That's the only answer. There is no other option. They can either maintain the euro and go into revolution, civil war, destruction, or they understand the civilized path, Yahweh's path, obviously, and then rebuild. There is only an option and an option only. So then the plan is already set in motion. The situation is then people must stabilize themselves and not go over the holy plan. As far as our nation, our country should retrieve from the world's scenario in a very gradual understanding, so then our protege of the Second World War has learned very mightily, so they can start taking over. Because they have a policy of trade. And this trade is going to help the world to get where they should be. Reducing the wars, reducing then famine, reducing then the destruction in this world. Because the time has come for this specific reason. There is no more reason for war. As we understand from the time of Metitiahu, the Messiah spoke. But then the understanding of his thoughts, they were put together very hastily. However, when you read the prophets, then you understand there is a time set for it. Yeshayahu, the great prophet of Israel, gave us in the 61st chapter a very concise and delineated and spaced understanding of the prophecy. Obviously, the Messiah was speaking precisely of this time, but then when he was in the earth, it was a very confused time, where the people, they were not where they should be at, and then he had to go through the entire teaching, yet many of the leaders, they did not believe him, and they ended up clinging to the old first service rather than understanding what he was trying to say. Yet they moved forward from that time on, and then we begin to understand why then the renewed covenant in times of the Gospels, they were put together so hastily. But then when you read the Torah and then the prophets and the writings, then you find those gaps, those timings, very delineated, very nicely placed. So then we understand why then Daniel said in 12th chapter, at the end knowledge would increase, because it would increase so much that the people would reach a certain point where the Creator Himself had to intervene. Because going beyond a certain point, when they don't have the ability of control of the information era, they begin to destroy each other. And since the whole world is linked with this new system, then comes in Revelation very clearly. And then for a time we're going to experience peace. But because it was set aside for it. Not because of work of a person or a group of people or then a nation, because of a holy Creator. So for our nation it's very imperative understanding our situation and not rough it up. Because then we are going to take on the end of the shaft, because we are truly cornered. We are cornered. Germany is cornered. Iran is cornered. There is only a solution and a solution only. The dismantling of the euro, and then the countries that are weak making a deal with China and come up with a program. We ourselves, United States, we remove ourselves from the world scenario in a very gradual, slowly motion. So then this new partner of the trade of the end can start then taking on. And then the rest of the world, then obviously they're going to be engaged in great changes for the rebuilding. But no more wars. Wars are prohibited. As per the instructions we understand, the wars are prohibited. It's a time of rebuilding. As then Yahweh gave the great king Shlomo, there is a time to be born and a time to die, a time then to build, a time to destroy, a time to love and a time to hate. It's a time of rebuilding. When there is a time of rebuilding, is no time for war. It doesn't mean the countries should not have armies and be trained, but they should not engage themselves in war. It's not time for it. Because the section of Yeshayahu, the 61st chapter, states then a section of it where then the world would experience His mighty hand. And the time has come for it. However, we must be humble and not to cling to the old junkies and try to do ourselves, because there is a plan already set in motion. And there is no way out of it. So it's very imperative for our government to remain as it is. It's not a perfect government, and the president was honest. He was not perfect. He did not come from a perfect situation, neither the country. But we must understand we had to take a plunge when this government started, because we were not paying our dues. And then obviously we had to go down vertical for some time until we get it stabilized. And obviously it's not the time to go out in the world and try to impose any other system other than already set by China. It would be stupidity. Then we would ruin ourselves. So then we make a deal with them, with the Chinese, and verify what can be done, so then we can make easy payments, and then we try to recuperate ourselves via what we have learned in the past. Who we were before the Great War. And then we re-educate our people in our great ways of doing out of the past. And then other countries will begin to copy our motivation of rebuilding, such as Africa and the other countries. But we have come to the understanding, and we as people, that our time in the world has ended. We must start retrieving for our benefit, because we are truly cornered. There is no way out of it. And these were predicted already a long time ago, so it's no news. Only because Yahweh has reached his finger on his agenda where we should be at the time of rebuilding, so we are in the time of rebuilding. Perfectly on time as usual. So then at least we can breathe, because we understand we won't face any more great wars. Not for quite some time, until we get this rebuilding in place, so then we can continue on with the holy schedule. We have this certainty that this is the time spoken of by the great prophet Yeshayahu. And the countries of the Middle East, they are going to retrieve, because they have no other option. If they go to war, and the countries then they can be maintained, and the countries then, some of them are having experience with sanctions, they are going to starve to death. They're going to slaughter each other until they are ruined. There is no way out of it. In terms of Syria, it's very easy understanding. The dictator must step down. And then the country must make a deal with China, and they verify what they can do for them. There is no other option. Because the slaughterings from those places must be halted. In any country making deal with China, they have a certainty of receiving the cargoes required to rebuild. As long as they give their word and don't play scoundrels. There is no other option. So we should be very relieved from wars for a great time of rebuilding, time of work, time of reorganization, time of reading, time of being together and understanding the truth. It's truly a relief, because then Europe, they understand the course of action. They are not left abandoned. So as the Middle East. But they must halt wars. People must go out and give the information, must halt from war. No longer war. There is a plan set in motion, and they are included. But they have to start acting as adults. And as for our government, then obviously we maintain our government that we have. There is no point in changing government for. There is no point. Absolutely no point. Because our president already started the retrieving. So he's already in line with the plan. And then in terms of extracting our own natural resources, we already have the natural resources, and only placing this point in action, it doesn't take very much. So his line of thinking is precisely in line with the Scripture. We should maintain as we are and then only making sure the agenda of the president gets done. And then we should be in a position of, at the end of the next 40 years, to be a country where we can make trade. Because so far we are extremely depleted. We can't go any further. We are truly cornered at this time. But thank God, Yahweh, He has decided then to have a country never waged an invasion of war, very understanding nation, extremely neutral, very capable, and wanting to do trade, and very generous. So from the understanding from heaven, at this time it is prohibited the act of war. Please stay tuned, much more coming up, because then I'm going to study other prophets and find out other areas where then the prophets they were speaking of the similitude from their times and then in line with the Torah, so then we have more certainty of the events to come. Please stay tuned.